everyone. So our first conflict out here coming out of Israel, and we're going to talk about as well what the hostage crisis and what that really means for Israel and Hamas. But first of all, what I really want to touch on first is Gaza out here. So of course, we can see a lot of airstrikes going on all across it, and what really caught my eye down here are the attacks that were seemingly reported out here between Israel and the militants out here in Han Yunis. So it makes me wonder if perhaps Israel is going to try and maybe push into this area as well. Even though that there is this ceasefire, there's kind of more or less up in the air right now. As you might have heard, the ceasefire might be delayed considering the hostage release is at the earliest now being put forward to Friday. So interestingly enough, as we know, the ceasefire relies quite heavily upon the hostage release. So it's from what it seems is that it's more or less kind of up in the air at this point. Although we can try and hope for the best out there. And also we can see that there are more clashes going on in the West Bank, and we'll probably see more out there. Although I'm not entirely sure if this ceasefire is also reliant upon the West Bank or if the West Bank relies upon it. So we'll see. And also a lot of activity going on here in the north between Hezbollah and IDF, which is also pretty interesting too. Like, will Hezbollah cease during the ceasefire? Who knows? But anyways, that's all really that's going on for today. There wasn't a map change or any purported changes out here. But other than that, let's look at some footage. So this is a pretty interesting clip coming out of Gaza, as we've talked about, of the extensive tunnels they seem to go throughout all across Gaza. These are some Hamas militants seemingly coming out and surrendering to IDF forces, and one of them lays down his arms out here, but they all surrender, and it's just interesting to see how prolific these tunnels are throughout Gaza, as they aren't just a place to hide, but seemingly also move across Gaza pretty much as a whole, especially in the northern area. So just talking about that, touching upon it, it's going to be hard in terms of Israel trying to completely clear Hamas out of Gaza, considering how very, very prolific they are to Hamas and how important they are, especially in this war, and how hard it's going to be for them to find them all these tunnel networks, and completely keep them cleared out. So it's just further indicative of this conflict and how hard it's going to be for Israel to meet its end goals, and how literally dug in Hamas is, considering they are dug, however many, like tens of feet below the surface. So, just in terms of that, that's all the really Israeli footage I had to show for today. So looking at Ukraine, we can see some pretty interesting updates actually out here. So first of all, it was pretty imperceptible to me considering how small it seemed to be, but in Avdiivka, we can see that Russian forces have pushed a bit past this roadway out here, closer towards the town or village out here. And also there is a map clarification in Ukraine's favor towards Avdiivka, which is another pretty small town out here. And also we can have to talk about Avdiivka, since it's such a contentious area, considering the amount of Russian losses, which we'll take a look at in a second here, at how hard they're really trying to push, and like, look at these gains. If we see out here, maybe a few hundred meters towards the city, as well as in this area near Stepova, we can see that they're pushing further and further towards this village out here, trying to advance along these tree lines, which over the past few weeks and months, they've been pushing really hard, trying to encircle it. And we can compare it to Bakhmut, although I do think that Russia is going to fight tooth and nail for this um, city or town out here, and I do think that eventually they're going to take it, but you know with the same amount of losses that we have been seeing lately. Also, Shumi, which is an area that we haven't really talked about until very recently, considering that this is an area that hasn't moved since 2014, considering this is the Donbass area that declared independence from Ukraine, and it's part of the 2014 civil war that Ukraine has been having for since then. So, it's pretty interesting to see what this might amount to if Ukraine is going to try and push further in this area and try and perhaps take back some of the territory that it had lost, years and years ago. Other than that, the only other updates out here in Spirna and Verkhno-Kamyanska, we can see in Ukraine's favor, seemingly pushing a bit, or as it was reported out here, uh, they were map clarifications, which are pretty interesting considering that in this area we haven't seen any movement except for this and uh, the Kharkiv counteroffensive that happened like a year ago. So perhaps are these clarifications, or perhaps these were maybe assaults by Ukraine, and maybe they finally amounted to this, or perhaps they're actually trying to push further into this area. Who knows? But it'd certainly be interesting to see if Ukraine is actually going to try and take back Luhansk. So other than that, let's take a look at some of the combats being reported. All right, so looking at some of the combat that's being reported, 58 combat engagements, which is about in line with what we'd expect coming out of Russia, especially lately. Which is we're probably going to expect it to stay around this amount. Considering how hard they're really going to try and push in the Avdiivka area out here, and also just talking about this Kharkiv sort of assaults out here, we haven't seen any Russian movement, at least any that I've seen lately in this area. So why they're attacking out here, are they trying to take back Kharkiv, maybe, or trying to, just further consolidate and make a bigger buffer in Luhansk, who knows? But it's just interesting to see how they're trying to broadly assault all across this front line, and a lot of the shelling, which is all across pretty much the entire shared border of Russia and their annexed republics. So just touching upon that, it's just it's pretty interesting considering how much is not really moving out here, uh, and yet seeing so much combat because it's not, albeit it's quite stationary, but that doesn't mean that it's not moving. Anyways, let's take a look at some footage. Alright, so here's some combat that's being reported out here in the Avdiivka area. We can see that there is actually a Bradley out here, and it is seemingly firing across this tree line, which is very well might be the tree line that we had talked about in the Stepova area, sort of in the Avdiivka direction. And it has popped smoke, as we can see out here, and it is firing quite heavily out there. So, just talking about the Avdiivka casualties that we've previously touched upon, and like I just said, even though we haven't seen much movement in terms of ground being exchanged between either side, that's not to say that there isn't really heavy fighting out here. Although in the next few coming months, the colder it gets, we're expecting, less combat engagements. So that doesn't mean, that either side is going to try and shell the other, or we're not going to see drone drops, which usually when front lines seem a bit more static, that's usually where we see more drone drop videos, which are pretty interesting to see sometimes. But of course I can't show them, considering the nature of them. But other than that, let's take a look at some of the other combat that's going on in the rest of the world. So we got some interesting combat footage coming out of China, actually, out here. So this is footage filming the northern Shan state of Myanmar. So why are we talking about both countries out here? So this is on the border of both countries. So this is someone on the border of China filming the northern Shan state of Myanmar. And what is happening here is that these are anti-junta forces firing and apparently ambushing the army out here, the Myanmar army. So what's interesting about this is that seemingly, this conflict is not spilling out, but it is literally, you can literally witness it from across the border in other countries such as China. So, I don't expect this to really spill over into China, although China really does have an interesting stake in it, considering that, from what I understand, there are certain places on the border of China within Myanmar that run a lot of scams, that where they scam a lot of people, many of them who are Chinese, and China is really trying to crack down on this because the individuals who run these complexes are of Chinese mafia. So just uh, China definitely does have a stake in this, considering they don't want their people getting scammed so heavily. Which, from what I understand, anti-junta forces are really trying to crack down upon that. At least that's what they are reporting, or what they are saying about their end goals. But it's something that we'll have to see if that's really what they're going to do out there. But just talking about this footage in general, it's pretty interesting to see how this is turning out. All right, so of course we also got to talk about Sudan for a second here. So this is some footage coming out of Omdurman, which, as we know, is the second most populated city in Sudan. And this is a perspective of the RSF out here. So it's just interesting to see, the way that these guys are fighting, either side. Of course, I don't really like talking about it because especially the footage is coming out of this area. I really don't. I mean, just in general, I really don't. I don't enjoy looking at combat footage, genuinely, because it's just the subject matter in terms of what happened to these people, no matter who they are. But on that note, just talking about this footage in particular, in terms of what comes out of this area. None of these guys look particularly trained on either side. Even the Sudanese military, these guys um, are pretty much just running around, and they don't look particularly trained. It looks like they're kind of just shooting down streets for the most part. And I mean, these guys are doing the same thing from what it looks like. Half of these guys, only a couple of these guys are really seemingly taking up a position. Meanwhile, most of these other guys are kind of just, I mean, this guy, where is he? This guy is literally just filming himself, as we can see out here. Um, Albeit he's taking cover behind a building, but anyways, I don't really want to show too much of what's going on out there, because I don't uh, want to get censored or anything, or get in trouble by YouTube. But anyways, just looking at this, we're going to expect more of this coming out here, but just considering that this is the RSF and these are the guys who are beating back Sudanese military, it kind of puts into perspective the kind of conflict that this is. Well, other than that, that's all I really had to talk about for today. I'm just going to try and hope that, a ceasefire or some kind of agreement can be brought between Hamas and Israel, and, some wishful thinking that maybe they'll come to a grander agreement between them both, that we'll see a ceasefire, considering we've seen Netanyahu say that after the ceasefire, Israel is going to continue their assault across Gaza to completely eliminate Hamas. So, not to say that Hamas are, good guys out there, considering, I mean, we've seen and heard everything that they did out there. So that doesn't mean that they can't come to an agreement, but I don't know. I just hope that, that more people don't have to suffer. And I'm also pretty concerned that if every hostage is released, you know, will Israel roll its sleeves up in this conflict? I don't know. That's just something that I've really thought about, is that if if Israel somehow comes to some kind of agreement where every single hostage is released, um, you know, what is really stopping them from completely leveling the entirety of the Gaza Strip? Yeah. Anyways, if you have any conflicts, any other comments you want to talk about, or anything else you want to bring to my attention, such as other things that are going on across the world, just let me know. And other than that, thanks for watching.